Did you guys play Pac Man World Re-Pac?
No.
Yeah.
Okay. Why don't you start, King?
I thought it was pretty average. I would probably play the original over it.
Really?
It's a bit hard. I've had a hard time explaining this to people, but I don't know if the right word is like plasticky, but like it is very the visual upgrade makes sense, but I also think it's kind of boring and removes a little bit of the charm that the original had. It's like I don't know. There are a lot of changes that they made that are like, I don't feel were all too necessary. I don't know if this is just a me problem or if this was also present in the original to some extent, but I felt like I struggled a bit with depth perception sometimes.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's because the drop shadow in the remake is not as well defined or what, but I felt like I was struggling with that a lot more. I don't know if they like redid the physics or something or like the movement. It seems like kind of a ground up remake, but I'm not really sure.
Yeah. This game is made in Unity, and since I have experience scripting and building prototypes in Unity, I can kind of comment on some things, I guess. Like, I totally hear what you're saying about the graphics, because like you compare it to something like Crash 4, right? Which was an Unreal Engine 4 game, and that game looks gorgeous. Like, it has like, you know, the textures have just like the right amount of detail for something that's cartoony. The animations are really smooth and well-defined. You know, the character designs look great and stuff. And then you go over to Pac Man World Re-Pac, and in Unity, how it works is you create something called the material, which is basically the bitmap for the texture plus a bunch of shader properties. Like, you can add a separate map to make something like shiny or metallic. You can add stuff to make it look rough in certain spots and shiny in others, you know. And for the most part, I found that Pac Man World Re-Pac erred on the side of really shiny, which gives it kind of that plasticky quality, where there isn't a lot of grit to the materials, so everything just kind of reflects back at the camera the same way. Makes it look kind of samey. So yeah, so I see that. They also reused a lot of assets from Pac-Man Museum Plus, I think. Like, the same people made both games, which is a little weird, because one is like an arcade collection and another is like a 3D platformer. I thought, considering that, the developer did a really good job. I'm personally going to say, because I replayed the original this year, like before I finished the Aim to R video, I've been playing around with several video ideas I wanted to do instead, and one of them was a Pac Man World Remake or Rebreak. So I replayed the original, and what I found was that, like, you've always loved the game more than me, King K. It's one of your favorite platformers, right?
Yeah, I honestly think I probably still like it more than 2. Yeah, honestly.
And it's like that. I see what people like in it, but it's never been one of my favorites because it kind of felt like with Crash Bandicoot, at least you would have like levels that you would have like a hallway level, and then you might have a side scroller-ish level, and then you might have a level that kind of combines them. And I found that a lot of the level design in Pac Man World 1 feels a little samey because the camera angle is kind of locked. It's sort of Mario 3D World-esque. I mean, it was a solid, competent game, but there are some parts of it that I really actively dislike. Like, I hate the King Galaxian boss, the second phase, because that just goes on forever. And then if you die, you have to do the whole thing all over again. Anubis Rex, I don't like. Clown Pre has weird controls.
That they improved the bosses in the remake.
Yeah.
I will say that. Anubis Rex doesn't make me want to gouge my eyes out anymore.
Yes. And that's kind of where I am, where like I feel like the things I didn't like in the original were universally improved in the remake. So I would rather replay it personally.
Yeah.
But that said, it does have some weird changes that I do not understand. Like, one of the most memorable things about Pac Man World 1 for me is the opening cutscene, the little CGI cutscene where everybody gets kidnapped. They completely redid that in the remake for some reason. Like,
when I saw that, I was like, this fucking sucks. Like,
well, they did it.
The original opening cutscene was kind of hammy, but like, I don't know. It had personality. It was cool.
And
I liked it.
And
the new one's like really just boring. and like in general, the kind of vibe that I get from like Talk Man and stuff like that. It feels just like a little bit less, I don't know, it feels a little bit more standard, and they made it a little bit more like traditional adventure kind of, I don't know. It was a bit like in the original, it was kind of like, yeah, Talk Man like kidnapped Pac Man's wife and shit, and now he has to go like, you know, like, and the opening cutscene made it a lot more clear that this was like a kind of a distressing thing for Pac Man, you know? Like,
yeah. He literally screams in primal agony at the camera in the beginning, you know? And because, like, one thing that they changed is that they got rid of the voice acting is all, like, nonsense syllables and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like, I don't think the CGI cutscenes in Pac Man World 1 have aged particularly well, personally, but they have a certain distinct charm to them that is unique to that game. It's part of that game's identity. So when you strip that away and just have everything be text-based and have no voice acting and make the cutscenes look completely different, it feels like a completely different game, you know?
Yeah.
And I would be surprised if they did that because the game was low budget and they didn't want to have to, they couldn't afford voice acting and localization, so they just kept it text-based. I mean, it works fine enough for what it is, but considering that the original exists and I remember what it's like, it did feel like, you know, some of the original's identity was lost because of that. But, you know, in terms of playing it, I would personally recommend the remake because it has 60 FPS, it's HD, so it's easier to play on like a modern TV and stuff. They made a lot of small gameplay improvements that I really appreciated. And yeah, but in terms of like remake or re-break score, it's probably like a remaster or a remake on my score if I had to pick one. It's not a perfect replace. So,
what about the Klonoa remakes?
Oh yes.
Oh, I guess, yeah. I mean, those are pretty good. I would have liked them to do, they're not like my ideal Klonoa remakes or anything, but they're a perfectly fine way to play these games, and I'm glad people have access to them.
Yeah, like I was able to play through Klonoa 1 for the first time. I thought it was pretty great. I
am glad that there's a non-insane way to play Klonoa 2 these days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because Klonoa 2 is probably, it feels like a
let's look up how much it costs
by the universe. Not only does it cost a fuck ton, it is probably the hardest game I've tried to play that isn't on like PC or DOS or some shit. Like it's like you have to hook up a fucking PS2 and then like it has, when you desync the HDMI or whatever when you walk through a loading screen every fucking time you walk through a loading screen. It's like the most frustrating game to play, and it's my favorite fucking game. Come on. Why'd they have to do that? Why is this happening? What's going on? But now we have this remake, which I don't think is like perfect, but I think it is good enough that I can just play this version of it and enjoy it all the same. So it's like, I frankly am still a little baffled that this even exists, if I'm going to be honest, but I'm glad it does. I hope it sold well. I don't know how much it sold.
Now listen.
I hope people get to, I'm just glad that people can readily experience Klonoa now, even if there are some things I may have handled differently about the remake, and that I think that maybe a little bit has been lost in the transition, just a little bit, especially with Door to Phantomile, which I'm not like gonna knock what they've done with the remake, but personally, because I have such an attachment to the original, I think I would prefer to play the original Door to Phantomile still these days, which is kind of just a personal thing. I think that the atmosphere is a lot stronger, and I don't know. I just would prefer to play the original. I think the original has some problems. Like, I think that it's a bit harder to hit stuff in the foreground and background. Like, I think that there were a lot of worthwhile changes in the remake. I think it's a perfectly fine way for people to play it as well. It still has the heart, but
I don't mean to to bring light to this, but I will remember. I remember your reaction when these remakes got announced. It was one of the most wholesome and one of the sweetest things I've ever experienced from you.
Well, you have to realize I had pretty much given up. Like, I didn't think Klonoa, like they were making a movie and then it got canceled. The comic thing they were doing like died out. It basically seemed like they just never touch it again. And when those literally just remaster ports got announced, I don't know. It like kind of broke me a little bit, honestly. I don't know that something like, I guess that just shows you how much they mean to me as pieces of art, you know?
I mean, hey, honestly, I would probably react the same if my duology that I want remade actually got like a remake. So I'd be the same way. It's okay.
After Klonoa, for the end of time, you can always say that I have gotten everything that I've ever wanted. You're allowed to say that forever, because I basically have.
Oh man, who did you kiss up to get what you want? So what do I gotta do?
I don't know.
Get your Golden Sun fix? Yeah.
Fuck.
Well, I had given up hope on Klonoa, and like, I'm not gonna say Golden Sun's gonna happen, but like, I was literally in a place where I never thought it would ever happen.
Yeah.
So, you know, hopefully one day.
Yeah. If you have not played Phantasy Reverie yet, everybody in the chat, or have had interest in Klonoa but haven't played it, I would definitely recommend Phantasy Reverie. Like, the originals have gone down in price since it's came out, so that's another good thing about it.
Yeah.
But in terms of the convenience of being able to play these games on a modern digital TV and stuff, like, you're getting 2 games for the price of one for $40. It runs well, it looks pretty nice. Like, it's not the best HD remaster I've ever seen, but they cleaned up really nicely, and they play well. And as we discovered when we did our playthrough, the PC version lets you turn off the bloom. So if that's something
I think the bloom is quite excessive personally. And I'm fucking glad that there's a version of it exists where you can turn it off. And when I turned it off, I was like, I became a lot more appreciative of it overall in the visual upgrade. I think 2 is probably the stronger remake for me of the 2, but that's just me.
I'd like to go back and, you were talking about the playthrough. It'd be cool if we could finish that too.
I mean, I personally would just want you to play it and finish it first, to be honest.
Sure.
It's a pretty short game, but...
Oh yeah, even the first Klonoa was pretty short. I'll do that. Fuck yeah, let's go. Go mode.
Like, yeah, if you do that, then like I'm continuing doing that. But at this, I mean, like I don't know. I guess there's no problem with you watching the entire game, but it's kind of like,
it takes away some of the stuff. I get it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Omori, where you're better off experiencing it for yourself, I guess, how many other games do you guys want to cover? Are we going to get to number 1 games of the year at this point?
I mean, I got like a very small handful that I can just kind of spitball real quick, if that's okay.
Okay.
Do like a EXO-style lightning round?
Sure.
So, some time ago, I was talking about, like, when we were doing, like, a Game of the Year podcast, I think this was, like, back in 2018 or something, 2018, 2019. I was talking about this little game called The Liar Princess and the Blind Prince.
Yes.
Yeah, so that team actually made another game, like, in that style, called The Cruel King and the Great Hero. And it's, uses a similar art style, similar-ish music, similar storytelling, but this time, they made it a turn-based RPG. Which is kind of weird because it's a 2D side-scroller and there's not really a lot of puzzles or dungeons or anything like that. It's a lot of straight lines and paths, and it's not really... Like, it's a fun enough game. I think it's very charming and it's very sweet. I just don't think maybe an RPG was the right way to go about it, because also mechanically it's not really that interesting, but it was nice to see, the team that made a game that I very much appreciate and very much like. They gave another genre a stab. I don't think it worked out the best, but it's cool that they tried, and I hope they make another game in a few years. It's a really charming little story. And then like the last 2, I'm kind of going to put in one category. I played a little bit of Harvestella, and I also played a lot of Rune Factory 5, which are life sims, farming games, also with a little bit of dungeon crawling. Rune Factory 5 specifically, I very much enjoyed. It's very, very, very flawed, especially on the Switch. The performance is abysmal. Because, it does... Okay, so, it does, a similar thing that Jack on the PS2 does, where it's, there isn't really any loading screens when you go from environment to environment. You have, your little farm area, and then you just walk right into the town, and then you go, you exit the town, and you have, this huge overworld that has, little dungeons hidden away, which is a cool idea, but at the same time, it kills the performance on the Switch. It just absolutely butchers it. It didn't really need to have anything like that. It's cool that they tried, but they just needed to scale it back. And like, it feels like, and I mean this like in the nicest way, like if this game came out on the PS2 when I was a kid, I would have fucking ate this up. I would have thought this was like the greatest game of all time. I felt very, I don't know, it took me back to that time when I would like get a new game on the PS2, play it, and like be like, oh wow, this is like the coolest thing. Like, you know, like when Dark Cloud on the PS2 came out, like I loved that game. Doesn't really hold up that well as an adult, I don't think, but like, but like as a kid, it was awesome. It was like, whoa, like it was able to like capture me and like just make my mind run wild. Like, oh wait, what's this character up to? Yo, what's this about? You know, it was, I don't know how to like explain it properly, but like Rune Factory 5 is kind of the same. Like it reminded me of what it was like to play a game like that for the first time. Is it great? Probably not. You know, Harvestella, I think, does a better job in terms of like dungeon design, in terms of optimization. You know, it's not one giant overworld or anything like that.
Yeah.
It does a better job of like encouraging you to play around with different classes and different weapons, to use other people like in your party. Because like I think Rune Factory 5 and really just like the Rune Factory games in general, like they do a weird job of, because like you could get like your, how do you say, you can get NPCs that you can romance to join you in your dungeon spelunking and all that, in your exploration and your expeditions and all that. But they don't ever really do much. They're not really that useful, I don't think. You know, Harvestella definitely fleshes out that idea a bit more, I feel. I need to play more of Harvestella. I didn't get to beat it. I'm not very far in it, but you know, I'm liking this game quite a bit, so I just kind of wanted to bring those two up. I didn't really know where to squeeze them in, but like they're both fun, they're both charming, and if you like Harvest Moon-like games, Story of Seasons, Stardew Valley, check these out. They're fun.
All right.
That's all I got.
All right. I do want to talk about one last game before we get to number one games. I'm kind of loath to admit this, but I did play Bayonetta 3. So obviously this game is kind of inextricable from the controversy that came out when the former actress Helena Taylor posted about how she was only offered $4,000, but then they interviewed a bunch of people and they said like, no, it was $250,000. That's how much she wanted. And she wanted residuals, but they weren't willing to pay that. And then she was like, oh no, it was actually $4,000 for the cameo. That was the last offer I get, but the first offer was $10,000, and then they upped it to $15,000 when I, you know, asked for what I was worth. You know, it's a whole he said, she said kind of situation where it's kind of like, and she kind of poisoned the well by quoting the price for the cameo instead of the price she was offered for not the cameo, you know, where it's kind of like, who's telling the truth, whatever. The bottom line of the whole thing is that she's not in the game, and that for me kind of killed it in a way. Like, what I'm gonna say about Bayonetta 3 is the argument could be made that it's the best game in the series, like at least in terms of gameplay. The big innovation is that you can, in the previous games there were summons, which were basically quick time events where you finish off the enemy. And in this game, you can actually control your demons, like, directly. It's sort of like they stapled the Legatus system from Astral Chain onto Bayonetta. Except, like, in Astral Chain, it was better. Like, the whole game is built around that conceit, and they take the time to kind of teach you how to use it, and there's some unique stuff stemming from that. The Demon Slave system in this game is kind of like, you can queue up, like, one or two actions on the demon, which moves really slow and attacks really slowly, and then while it's doing that, you can also control Bayonetta directly, but it's like, while you're controlling the demon, you can't control Bayonetta directly. Like, you hold the ZL button, and while you're doing that, you control the demon, then when you let go, you go back to Bayonetta, but you can't do both at the same time, which you more or less could do in Astral Chain. Like, you could use the right stick to control your summon. I forget what they're called because I haven't played Astral Chain in years, but you could control Akira and the summon separately using both of the sticks. You can't do that in Bayonetta 3. So like the Demon Slave feels kind of stiff, and it's kind of like grinds the combat to a halt when you have to use it. There's also a new playable character who uses a sword. She has a katana, and she has a block mechanic instead of a dodge. She also has a dodge, but you can't do witch time with it. Like, you get the witch time by blocking at the right time instead of dodging. And she was alright. I didn't mind her all that much. But there are also these 2D levels where you play as Jean, which are the worst thing I might have ever seen. They are terrible. I don't know if you guys have ever played Spyro 2 Season of Flame for the Game Boy Advance.
No.
There are these levels where you play as Agent 9 that are like these 2D side-scroller run-and-gun type deals where you can hide in doors and collect power-ups and stuff. And the Jean levels are sort of like that. Like, they're 2D side-scroller levels with really gimped combat mechanics, and, like, they feel really undercooked, honestly, where they feel like they're not really adding that much to the plot. Like, I appreciate that Jean actually gets to do something, because in the second game, she dies at the beginning, and then the game is about bringing her back to life, essentially, so she doesn't get to do much. But though you could cut those levels and the game would probably feel better. I should mention that I did not finish it because honestly, I thought it was kind of dull. Like I mentioned how Spark 3 has a plot where it has a very basic setup and then the plot doesn't really go anywhere until the very, very, very end. Bayonetta 3, even though I haven't finished it, seems to be structured the same way. The game is built around like the concept of a multiverse. Like, it took the Marvel movies, like, 10 years to get to that level of kind of convoluted, you know? And they're doing this in the third game. Like, say whatever you want about the plots of Bayonetta 1 and 2. Like, they could be confusing and kind of cringe in some places, but they were really engaging. Like, I was glued to the TV when the cutscenes were happening because they were so weird. Whereas with this game, it just felt like, hey, you need to get 5 Chaos Gears so you can go to Singularity's dimension and fight him. And then that's the game for like 10 hours. And then I'm assuming that, like, I've heard from people that the plot like dives off the cliff at the end as well. I mean, I didn't get that far, but I really do feel like something tangible is missing in this game because Helena isn't in it. She made the character. Like, she was what made the character so interesting in the first 2 games. And, you know, I have nothing against Jennifer Hale. She was in Rift Apart. She was Rivet. I've seen her in a lot of different games, and she is generally a very good actress. I have nothing against her professionally, personally, or anything. But I do not think she was a good choice to recast Bayonetta. I don't think she really fills that void of personality that Helena had. And because of that, the character feels kind of static and boring in 3. I don't know, I just, like, it's not a bad game by any means, and it's probably better than I'm making it sound, but I had a really hard time trying to make myself sit down and continue playing it. And one other thing I want to say is that this game, I think, has cemented for me that the Switch needs a successor now. Because this game, the first 2 Bayonetta games run at 720p 60 FPS. And they were upgraded on Switch to, like, Bayonetta 2 had frame drops and performance issues here and there on Wii U, but that was fixed on Switch, so the game more or less runs at a solid 60 the whole way through. You get to Bayonetta 3, and it runs at like 800p 30 FPS, and it drops frames and has performance stutters all over the place. And there are some parts of the game that look really nice, and there are some other parts that look straight out of a 2007 Xbox 360 game. The Switch is clearly not strong enough for what they wanted to do, and they kind of had to really compromise it to fit it on the system. So I'm kind of at the point where I would like to see a Switch successor, because, you know, like, the PS4 came out in 2013, and the standard it developed was 1080p 30 FPS, and the Switch can't meet that, you know. And we're now in an era where 4K and like temporal upscaling is a thing. And it's just, the Switch wasn't exactly top of the line in 2017, and it definitely isn't now. So I'd very much like to see a successor sometime in the next couple of years, Nintendo. You know, because I gotta imagine when Bayonetta 3 comes out in that system, it's gonna play a lot better. So, yeah. It's not a bad game, but I was disappointed. Like, when I played Bayonetta 1 and 2 for the first time, I was glued to the screen, you know? Like, I couldn't put those games down. They felt really fresh and different. And the second one felt like had a really solid, compelling story to it as well. and then you play 3 and it just feels tired and like they didn't know what they wanted to do with it, so they went for this weird multiverse plot, and then nothing happens for 90% of the game. I was disappointed. So well, that's all from me on that game.
Is it time?
It is time.
All right.
Yeah.
King, let's hear it.
Okay. Well, to nobody's shock at all, my favorite game of the year was Xenoblade 3, so there we go.
It's mine too. That's my game of the year.
It feels, it's probably predictable. I don't give a fuck. The game was, like, fucking incredible. So, like, it's, at this point, I'm ready to say that it is my favorite Xenoblade game. I think it's been enough time. Ruminated on it a lot. I didn't do an entire second playthrough, but I got pretty far in it. And like, yeah, I think that it's the best one. It inherits the strengths of 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
And what it came out with is like a fucking banger of a conclusion to the trilogy that like also leaves room for them to do whatever the fuck they want going forward. And I think that it's a strong thematic game in terms of like the things it wants to tackle about living in the endless now, and like how it ruminates on like things like death and how to live your life and stuff like that. I think it explores that so thoroughly in literally every aspect of its design. It's a much more downbeat game in terms of like it feels like more of a, because the theme of the game is about like enjoying the smaller moments and stuff like that. I guess it's like a journey rather than a destination kind of a game in like its very core being. And it exemplifies that in being like one of the most fun Xenoblade games to play in the moment, with like so like your potential party can be fucking huge. And the way that they handle, like, it has a Final Fantasy V-esque job system that is about as in-depth as it is in Final Fantasy V, if not more, because it has more fucking jobs to choose from, where you can inherit the skills from those jobs and mix and match them into your character once they have enough levels with it. And you have 6 main party members, but the 7th one can be your ally, which there are like fucking 20 of them or something.
Mm-hmm.
And each of them have a unique job, and it's so, like, it's just so fucking finely crafted. It's like the most fun Xenoblade game. It doesn't fumble the tutorialization like 2 does. Like, I actually fucking understand what I was doing in the beginning of the game. Like, I got what it was going for pretty much right away. It has like a banger of an opening. It doesn't take a while to get going. It just kind of goes and it just starts sprinting. But like, it's also like a fucking a laid back smell the roses game. Like, I was just, dude, I don't know, man. This is like the best one. I don't know how the fuck they did it. It just is. And like, holy, like, I want to save some stuff for the video I'll eventually do on it. And I want to let you say some stuff, Ryan, too. But like, holy fuck. I was like, the game's incredible. So
I think very much like you. And in some ways, maybe this is a pun, but this game is definitely the best of both worlds between Xenoblade 1 and 2.
Yeah.
And admittedly, when this game got announced, I was a little worried that this would be an overcorrection of Xenoblade Chronicles 2, but thankfully it wasn't, Honestly, Xenoblade 3 is my favorite Xenoblade game, but I also think that I prefer Xenoblade Chronicles 2 over Xenoblade Chronicles 1. I think Xenoblade 2 does a lot more interesting things. But especially like after playing this, it's just like, it kind of like clicked with me that like this is kind of like, and this is maybe a weird connection or a weird comparison, but like it reminds me a lot of the Mother trilogy in the sense where it's like, not to say that Xenoblade 1 is as bad as the first Mother game, but in the sense where it's just like you play them, like you play like Xenoblade 1 and then 2 and then 3, and then you see how like they're connected first of all, and then you also see like how each game just gets so much better than the last one. So it's just like, you play through Xenoblade Chronicles 1, you're like, wow, that was a really cool game. Play through Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and then like, oh, it's like its own little standalone thing. Nope. Then you get to the point where it's like, you see how it's connected, and it's this huge, like, it's a mind fuck. It's like, oh my God. And then Xenoblade 3, it's like, that is the concept. It's just like, you see exactly how they're connected and how they kind of build off of each other. And then like, it honestly felt like a celebration of both of these games,
Yeah. Well, that's another one of my favorite things about it is that the homages it has to 1 and 2 is like in its DNA rather than it being like a crutch. Like,
yeah.
So like because they built this game with the framework of the two worlds trying, like, because the whole setting of the game is the two worlds are merged, but in an unfinished state. So you will constantly be getting little pangs of like, I kind of remember that, but it's like altered in such a way that it becomes a new thing, to where like you'll be walking through familiar environments with familiar musical motifs that like have their own new thing. It's like a new area and a new song, but like with little hints of things that you've seen before. And it's handled in such a way that makes it feel like kind of, some of those areas feel a little bit like, whoa, that's kind of weird. And it feels a little bit unnatural sometimes, but that's because the worlds are not supposed to be like this. And it's like kind of a genius way to set the world up in terms of like your main party of 6 are like 3 of them are very clearly inspired by the first game. And then the other 3 are like more inspired by the second game.
Yeah.
And there's a ton of shit like that throughout the game woven together that makes it feel like, I don't know, it's just like really, really well handled because it also is its own thing. At no point throughout this game that I feel like they were relying too much on the past, because they were able to tell their own story using the past as a framework. And it's just like, it's such a cool way to like, it's also like on a meta level, I don't think this was their intention at all. Like, I really don't think they did this intentionally, but it's kind of well known in this Xenoblade community that the fans of 1 and 2 don't really get along very well, to be honest. And there are a multitude of reasons for that, but like having the premise of the story be that the worlds of 1 and 2 and the factions of 1 and 2 are literally at war with each other is like, it's kind of hilarious, but also like it fits on even a meta level. Like,
I never even thought of it that way, dude. That is that's so fucking cool.
I don't think it was intentional because I don't know how much that community, especially because I think it's mostly a Western part of the community. Yeah. I don't know, like, I don't know if that ever reached the devs or if that's even something they were thinking about. But at the same time, it's just such a perfect, like, meta thing that's happening based off of that story. Because, like, I think it's more based on how Xenogears was made. Like, in that game, there are 2 warring factions with names very similar to Kevis and Agnes. So I think it was inspired by that, but, like, it just kind of makes for, like, a perfect premise for the game to, like, combine the strengths of 1 and 2, and that ends up kind of being the message in a way, because the message of the game is more about like, even if like life is a temporary thing, it's about like enjoying it while it lasts and not extending it forever, because the core conceit, like the villain of the game is like more of an ethereal thing where like it's about rising up against the idea that because this world is like in a stasis, and that's kind of why I like that the music's a little bit more like calm and a little more downbeat than the other 2 games. And I think it was done with intention because the world is like has a stillness to it that like is because they have halted the fusion process to the point where basically it's stuck in time. The game even opens with like the first song in the game that you hear, the like Everblight playing, opens with like a clock ticking. And I think that's fucking rad. The map is like an Ouroboros. You start at one end and then at the end you end up back at Everblight Plain.
Yeah.
Like, and
it's a giant circle.
Like, and that's the theme of the game is that the endless now. It's a fucking Ouroboros. It's a cycle that keeps repeating itself. It's like, this game is it's one of the best RPGs I've ever played. This is also a game that has a trope that I fucking hate, but they actually made it work. The way how it handles characters, quote unquote, coming back to life. Like, you see a character die and then they come back to life. The way how they handled that is perfect. They knew what to do. It's like, oh my, like, I hate that shit, but they made it work.
So it's not Dragon Ball is what you're saying.
It's like a core facet of the world building that people can come back. Like, I won't go too in depth about it, but like, it's like literally the world is built on that idea almost. Like, it all kind of comes together in the end, like in true Xenoblade fashion, you know, it like, you learn things about the world that kind of recontextualizes the whole playthrough, and like it's just like really cool.
And there's this moment where it's just like you see like, and I won't spoil who, but like you see this character who dies, but they come back, and it's just like you see them like they go through this process so many fucking times, and it's like Exo, you've seen Steins Gate,
yes,
and how it's just like, you know, the characters like going back in time, trying to like prevent this one character from dying. It's not like exactly the same as that, but like when I was watching this scene play out, I got Steins Gate vibes from it. It was very similar, you know? Also, this
like the premise of the game, because like we were all together when the trailer came out, a trailer at least, a story trailer of some kind
came out.
Yeah. And based on that, it kind of seemed like the main characters were basically Lassie from Final Fantasy 13.
Yeah, it's similar. They're the Ouroboros, which means that the 6 of them are like, they can fuse and become like giant mech things.
Very Xenogears.
Look more like demon mechs, but like basically the idea is that one person from both of, because like I said, 3 of them are clearly from the Xenoblade 1 faction, the other 3 are from the Xenoblade 2 faction. Each one of those 2 fuse together, and it's called interlinking, and they make a giant mech thing. And that ends up being the case where like the 3 different pairs become like the strongest relationships in the party, basically. And that's yet another reason that like it kind of is like a marriage between 1 and 2, that the warring factions have to like interlink together and like become friends. That's like the main premise, is that they're supposed to defeat Mobius, who are like I guess you could say that they're sort of an analog for like rich people, that kind of ruling class thing, like sort of. It's not like a super deep part of the game, but like they like literally drink people's life force as in wine glasses and play like chess.
That's literally a plot point from Jupiter Ascending.
But they basically
the rich
like,
elite,
you know, it's like kind of like a thing where like the war isn't like a thing that really matters as much as it is the people controlling it, you know? It's like kind of a thing like that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's like basically the main premise, is that they're basically there so they can stop the what's called the Endless now, by like bridging the 2 factions and stopping the war, because the war has been raging on for like, people don't even remember when it started or why people are even fighting. So basically it's about like stopping the war and stopping the Endless now and shit like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know what?
But to do that, they have to learn to love each other, the people from the 2 factions that were at war. And to do that, you like, I think in an interview they said that they wanted to specifically create the game so that each one of the members of the party, each 6, gets like a defining moment or like several defining moments.
Yeah.
And I really felt that, because this is probably the most solid core cast of any of these games.
It's one of my favorite casts in an RPG, period.
Yeah.
And you know,
it's a really solid set.
It's funny because like you're also talking about like how this game is also about like living in the moment and like appreciating like what life has to offer. But you know what else it's about? It's a love story. You gotta see all these little youngins just like falling in love and developing feelings. It's the cutest fucking thing ever. I love these people.
Yeah, and it's like,
wasn't that sort of in the first one with like Fiora and Shulk?
Not like
it was not very well written.
Not like this.
Yeah, it was like, that was sort of a thing, but in this game it's like literally all 3 pairs have like a romance thing going on. I think like it's not really,
is like
insanely well developed, but the main 2 characters are probably one of the best that I've seen.
There's a moment. There's a moment at the end. I'm like, are they going to do the thing? Are they going to do? And they do the thing. I won't say what it is, but they do a thing. I
the
fucking
equivalent
screamed.
of sharing the Palpu fruit.
I clapped. I clapped. Because so many games shy away from doing the thing, and they did the thing. Huh?
Is it a gay kiss?
No.
Well, you know, it's.
But I'm not going to spoil it.
You know, it's fucking. The ending's also like bittersweet. Because they like, it's kind of like, it makes me angry thinking about it, because the theme of the game is like, you have to be okay accepting loss and accepting that things can't go on forever. And it makes the ending like, it infuriates me, because it's like, I have to be okay with the way they end the game, because that's the whole point of the game. But it's also a sad ending in a way, but it can't be sad because you can't like, it's like one of those perfect thematic conclusions that's like, the game has taught you that this sad ending is you have to be okay with it and accept it, and it's like kind of genius in that way.
Well, okay, I was actually a little like thrown off guard by the ending, because like I thought the game, and again, I'll try not to like spoil anything, but like I thought the premise of the game was that they have to do a specific thing, and then like at the end, after you beat the final boss, they say like, oh well, it's actually the opposite. of what you thought it was going to be, but the way how they kind of say that they kind of make it sound like as if, oh no, this was the thing all along. What, you didn't catch that? And I'm like, wait, what? And then like there's this thing that happens at the very end that kind of like, I guess it just confused me. I'm like, oh, I thought we're doing this. I don't know, like there's a lot, like I want to say like what happens, but I can't spoil it, and it's infuriating.
Yeah, I'm thoroughly confused as someone who's unfamiliar with this game.
I don't know. It's just like I thought it was like they kind of spell it out that they were going to do one thing, and at the end they do the opposite of that.
Well, I think
but it's
the
not
way
like
that it's written
subversion
is,
of expectations, though.
No.
Yeah, it's sort of like the way that it's written is they never explicitly say what they're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
So the implication is that they're going to do one thing, but then you reach the end, and at least I sort of realized that they were talking about doing something entirely different the whole time. So it's something like that, I guess. It's like a thing where like they never explicitly say one way or the other, but they like leads you to believe one thing when it's actually something else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But like the last cutscene, anyways. Like ultimately, at the end of the day, I did think that the ending was perfect. Like the last shot. Again,
well, it
won't
made me
spoil
cry
it,
a lot.
I thought so, that was just like, you know what? Okay, maybe I was a little thrown off, but like that's how you do it. That's how you end a fucking video game, dude. Oh, Xenoblade 3 was a really good fucking game. I loved it, and this is hands down easily my game of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's my game of the year. So
let me ask a question for you guys, because I have not played any of these Xenoblade games, which is why I did not play this one, because it looks kind of interesting, but I know the twist at the end of 2 about how it's connected to 1, so I figured there would probably be knowledge from the first 2 games that might make the story more satisfying or something if I played them before 3. Is there one of these 3 games in particular you would recommend to me?
To you?
If you are going to get into Xenoblade, and again, I'm not really the expert here, like, leave that to King and Jeb, like, they're more about these games, but I honestly think if you're going to get into Xenoblade, start with 1, then play 2, then 3.
Yeah, at this point, it feels like you almost have to do that. There was a point in my life where I would tell people you could play either 2 or 1 first. I still think you probably could, honestly, but
I mean,
it's weird because I feel like you basically have to play 3 after 1 and 2, or it just doesn't reach the full effect.
Well, I would even argue that, like, a lot of the reason why I liked Xenoblade, because I ended up really enjoying Xenoblade 2 when I finished that. A lot of the reason why I enjoyed it as much as I did is because, like, because, like, for a while, I didn't really care for the game. I was very, like, lukewarm. I was kind of on and off. And then they released Definitive Edition, so I picked that up and I played through it. And I'm like, okay, I know that was pretty good. But then when I went back to 2, it's just like you see, again, like how they're connected, and like not even just like in terms of like the story, but even like mechanically, like just kind of the things that like it improves upon. You know, it's just like when you play them back to back to back, like you get to see like the bigger picture. It's just like you can't. It's like having the dough in pizza and then having the sauce and then the cheese. You need all 3 to make it work. You know.
Like, the impression I got from watching King's video is that the first game is really solid and well made and very kind of, I think, affected a lot of people, like emotionally and stuff when it first came out. It felt very fresh, I guess.
Yeah.
And then you get to Xenoblade 2, and Xenoblade 2 is kind of the messy follow-up where some things are really improved, but the tutorialization sucks, and there's some anime cliches thrown in there that kind of is sour the broth a bit.
One might call it a Ryan game, even.
Well, Ryan game just means anime RPG, personally. So yes, it would be, but I mean, like I've seen people complain about the cutscene where I think it's Pyra, or no, wait, it's Mithra's the blonde one, wakes up and wrecks his bed.
Yeah,
goes monkey mode.
Yeah,
like some of the cutscenes look pretty cringe.
Oh, they are.
I'm not gonna lie.
Oh, they are. The voice acting is.
There are some scenes with Tora and Poppy that I literally can't look at when I play the game. Like, it's that bad.
Yeah, that stuff looks pretty uncomfortable, honestly.
It does not pass the walk-in test.
Yeah. So I don't know. I guess I have Definitive Edition. I'll see if I can't find some time to try it.
I don't think you'll like it, but I mean, if you, you can go for it.
Let me put it this way, dude. Let me put it this way. You could play it on, because like this is what I did, and I don't give a fuck. Like I played on the easier difficulty. Dude, I beat the game in like 35 hours, you know?
Only 35 hours?
Well, when everyone's saying that Xenoblade is like a 60, 90 hour long RPG and I was able to beat it in like 30 hours in the easiest difficulty, you know? It's like,
Xenoblade 1 especially it's like you can ignore a lot of the side quests and kind of just blitz through it pretty fast.
Mm-hmm.
Depends on how much you want to do the exploration. Because I usually take a longer time playing Xenoblade 1 because a lot of the side quests kind of suck, but like I love exploring the Titans. I think the open world's really fun to explore and stuff like that. But if you aren't into stuff like that, then you can kind of mainline it pretty quick.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know.
Like
I feel like you could do it because you got through Persona. Like, I don't know.
I mean, I really like Persona 5, and I mean, Berseria doesn't seem like the kind of game I'd like either.
Yeah, I think it's worth a shot, at least.
Yeah.
I'm willing to give it a fair chance. You know, it's just more like trying to find the time and energy to commit to something. Because like when I hear that game is like 100 hours long, that kind of puts me off on it a bit. That's why I haven't played it yet. Because that's kind of a hell of a commitment to make.
Like I said, play it on the easier difficulty. Because like that one is a game I played mostly for the story anyways. So the story, the characters, learning about them. So, you know, give it a shot. It's a lot, especially Definitive Edition. It's a lot more like clear cut in terms of like how the mechanics work. It does a better job of like explaining like what the systems actually do than if you're playing on the Wii or the new 3DS, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
all right.
Exo, before we get to you, can I give like an honorable mention to a game real quick?
Sure.
I kind of feel like if we have to talk about Elden Ring a little bit, because that, you know, I don't...
that's right.
Yeah, Exo, you haven't played it, have you?
No, I haven't played any of the... Well, I've played Demon Souls. Actually, it's Demon's Souls, Possessive, which throws me off every time. But I played that on PS3 for maybe like an hour once, and that's about it, as far as Souls games go.
And, you know, King, you haven't like played a whole heck of a lot of it, right?
I played like 6 hours.
Yeah.
Which is basically nothing.
Well, I played 40 hours, which is also basically nothing. Like, if you want to talk about a game that's like intimidating, it's fucking Elden Ring, dude. I gotta give this game a lot of credit because, like, it's one of the most impressive games I played in the sense where it's just like, you think the game is so big, but like, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's like, I don't understand how they go from, I don't know how they make these games so fast and how they make them so polished, you know? It's insane to, and like just the level of mechanics and the size of the game and how many bosses there are.
So, may I ask a question?
Yeah.
Because this game has been touted as kind of an open world Souls game.
Yeah.
But what I've seen of Dark Souls 1, it seems like that world is interconnected as well. So kind of what makes this game so much more open than the others?
Well, I mean, you just kind of said it right there in the sense where it's like Dark Souls 1 is more interconnected. This isn't necessarily about things being interconnected. It's about like the actual, like you're exploring an entire continent as opposed to just like...
The way that I would put it is that Elden Ring is like a Breath of the Wild, whereas Dark Souls is like an Ocarina sort of thing. Like it's more of a Metroidvania where like you pretty much it's interconnected, but like through hallways and dungeons, you know, like there's not like a big... Elden Ring is like a giant open field where you can find dungeons and find caves, which are kind of like shrines. So that's like pretty much the perfect way to describe it, I think.
All right. Yeah, and I did watch your video on it, King, which was a while ago, I guess.
And people are very upset with me when I made that video.
Yeah, for stupid reasons.
I do want to say, like, from an outsider's perspective, the Soulsborne... Like, I'm sure there are plenty of nice, friendly people in the Soulsborne community who are very, you know, understanding and personable. But it does seem like there is at least a faction of that community that can be kind of a little toxic, maybe.
I wouldn't even say a
like,
little.
Yeah, a little more than a little.
I'm trying to be polite.
Kind of lowballing it.
I'm trying to be polite and not overgeneralize this community, you know? And it's those people put me off from those games, honestly.
They're very gatekeepy, I find.
Yeah. Or it's like, I appreciate that people enjoy how challenging these are, and Miyazaki, apparently his motivation was, if I recall your videos correctly, King, is that he wanted the world to feel grounded and realistic, so that was kind of the motivation for making them so challenging.
Yeah.
I appreciate all of that, but it's kind of like I sort of brushed over this when we talked about Tunic, but I found the difficulty of that game really frustrating. Like the Garden Knight probably took me like 15 tries to beat because the mechanics just felt so stiff. I really didn't like how blocking in Tunic used stamina. I don't know if that's
a Souls
standard
thing.
in Souls.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah, I really did not like that. So I don't know. It's kind of what's kept me from trying these games is the culture kind of around them. So
I say fuck the culture. Fuck it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like at this point, I've just decided that like there are people that will never like.
Yeah.
That video I made, I don't think I made a single critique of the game. That was not even what the video was about. But that's how people took it.
Yeah.
And the only way you can take it that way is if you just don't listen to anything that was said at all. And the people just come over there and they're like, you don't think this is the greatest gift to mankind that you must be playing right now for the next couple of weeks of your life? You must be doing that. It's like it's an annoying fan base to deal with. One of my least favorite to interact with. Because
like the gist of it seemed to be like you were going through a pretty rough, anxious phase of your life.
I was going through an extremely bad. This thing that I was going through made me get a therapist. It was that bad. Like I had to find one immediately because I was in such a bad headspace, and I was not in the mood to play a fucking over 100-hour long game where every fucking boss is Dark Souls hard.
Yes,
I just couldn't do it in a world that is built to be oppressive and unwelcoming. No, I didn't want to fucking deal with that. I want to play fucking Kirby. I just wasn't in the mood.
Which props for you, honestly. Maybe this doesn't get said enough, but honestly, it's good for you that you got help. A lot of people don't,
that's
so if you need help,
because I would be in a much darker place if not.
Yes, a little note to anyone who's listening: if you feel as if you need help, please get therapy. Don't let.
Yeah, and hopefully the fucking American healthcare system will let you get a fucking therapist.
Please fix that. Ugh.
Yeah.
Well, it's also like, you know, different strokes or different folks and all that. Like, I also was, I mean, maybe not to like, you know, it's comparing apples to oranges. I was also dealing with a lot as well. But at the same time, it was just like, there was a part of me that was just like, fuck you. I don't know how to explain. Like, I was dealing with like a lot as well. And it's just like, oh yeah, here's this game that's like really hard and really challenging and unwelcoming. I'm like, well, if it's going to be unwelcoming, fuck it. I'm coming in anyways. I'm a fucking wreck. I'm gonna raise some hell. Fuck it. I'm gonna punish myself.
A lot of people, there have been a lot of experiences. I don't know if you've ever heard of writing on games before, but his name's Hamish Black. I mean, we're kind of friends. We haven't talked in a while, but
hey, Hamish.
I doubt he'd watch this, to be honest, but he made it one of his breakout videos a while back was how Dark Souls helped him through his suicidal depression, I think.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where you're like, oh, really? Dark Souls helped you through that? But it was sort of a similar thing where like the reason it helped him through it was because it like forced him out of the slump he was in and like made him engage with something really, really. And he even says in the video that this is not like it did not like cure his depression or anything, but it like helped him cope in the sense that like, and he also said he does not recommend this necessarily. It was just an experience he had where like it really helped him through his like that phase of his life where like it was a game that was basically forced him to engage with it on its terms, and it was an extremely, extremely satisfying thing to get through because of that made him feel happy and fulfilled, you know?
Yeah.
So the games can kind of have that effect on people. I think that's why it has such a cult of personality around it, is because it's like, you know, there are hard games, sure, but like these games are hard in a way that's like, it's sort of seen as like a badge of honor almost to some people if you beat a Souls game, which is kind of weird because I think there are harder games that have been made, but it's like I don't know, it's kind of like a gauntlet of like challenges where like the games are just not built to be friendly in any way whatsoever. So like getting through something like that is kind of like, like walking over hot fucking coals with your bare feet, like,
yeah,
it's sort of like I don't know, it can have that effect, I guess.
Yeah. And also, like, with this one in particular, with the open world, it gives me an excuse to, like, it gives me this huge playground just to, like, get lost in.
Yeah.
And just to I guess literally, fuck around and find out. Like, I remember, like, one of the things that, like, everyone always talks about, like, one of their earliest experiences is, like, when they get, like, the little horse mount, and then they go to, like, this lake that's, like, to the right of the starting area, and this giant dragon just, like, spawns in, and it's a boss fight, And then, like, if you kill it, there's, like, a chance you could learn, like, a really cool dragon spell, or, like, you get, like, an item that can help you learn, like, dragon spells and everything. It's always throwing something different at you. And it always keeps you on your toes. It always keeps you guessing. It's a really, really good game, but I will never be able to beat it because it is way too big. And honestly, like, I think I've had my fill. Like, I kind of want to keep playing to see, like where it goes. One of the things that people always say about Elden Ring is just like, oh, it's one of the more accessible games in the Soulsborne series because, like, if an area is giving you a hard time, you can always just go back, you can leave, do some other stuff, and then come back when you're ready, which is only, like, yeah, you technically can do that. But, like, if you're stuck in an area, for example, and you're dying a lot, you have to go back to a certain point to get your souls or your runes or whatever, And if you die on the way there, it's so much progress that gets lost and it's wasted, Like, that's one of the biggest turnoffs for me with these games. I think this is like this was the game that made me realize, like, why the Soulsborne games don't really click with me all that well. I think it's literally just the losing all of your, like, your, what do you call it? Like, currency?
I don't know what they call it in Elden Ring, because I think it's like, just in Bloodborne they're called blood echoes. In the Souls games they're called souls. I don't really even know what they call it in Elden Ring, but, like, I'm
pretty sure it's just runes, but it's just like games like this, like Jedi Fallen Order, fantastic fucking game. But it does the same thing. Tunic does the same thing. It's just like, I feel like dying and being pushed back a certain amount, I think that's punishment enough. I just think, like, losing all of your souls and then, like, if you die, they're just gone for good.
I feel like these games, I am a proponent of these games having an easy mode. I know this is a controversial thing and whatever. I don't fucking care. I don't think it's, like, some people make this a huge deal. I really don't think it's a big fucking deal. Because if, like, especially, I've been playing Fire Emblem Engage lately, and I think that the way that game, or these games, because they've been handling this way for a while, the way they handle it is perfect. They have a difficulty slider, and you can choose whether your units die permanently or they just die temporarily. And if you do that for Souls, literally, what do you lose? Because, in Fire Emblem, the hardcore fans just pick classic mode. They just do that. I pick classic mode. Yeah. I don't even describe myself as a hardcore Fire Emblem fan, but I do. If I were to play Souls, I'm just going to pick the mode that's like Dark Souls, where death has, like, a lot of punishment, and then you have to go back to bonfires and stuff, and the bosses are fucking hard. But then why not make an easy mode? Because it just lets people enjoy it more. More people can play the game. Everybody fucking wins.
Yeah.
My train of thought on that whole thing is more so just, like, if the devs want to, that's fine. If not, I'm not going to, like, make a stick
I'm not
going
to force them to do it, but I just don't see where the controversy comes from of, like, this would, like, ruin the game if it was implemented. I just don't get it. I think that goes back to the fan base being a little bit, like, gatekeepy and, like, I don't know. It's kind of an annoying fan base to deal with, but I don't care. Yeah. I say add an easy mode if they want to do it. I think maybe one day they probably will, because they've made it so much more accessible than it was in Demon's Souls.
And that's my train of thought. It's like, if they want to, cool. If not, who cares? We're all gonna die through the heat death of the universe anyways. So,
maybe in trillions of years, yeah.
Well, I mean, you don't know that. I could feed the sun Chipotle and be really gassy and it'll explode.
Yeah, I mean, we once thought the world was like, everything revolved around us. I don't know why it took me a while to say, but everything revolved around the Earth. So you never fucking know.
Yeah, everything revolved around the Earth, but that's not true. Everything revolves around me.
That is very true. There you go.
Yeah, honestly though, I think Elden Ring's a kick-ass game, but at the same time, it's like it might be just a little too much sometimes. Like I remember, like, when I was playing it, when I was going through, let's say, my depressive spell, which lasted for several months. I was very, very much engaged with it. And then I decided, several months later, like at this point, it was like a few weeks ago, where I'm like, oh yeah, I'll pop it back in. I'll play it for a bit. Why not? See, how far I can get. And I was miserable. I'm like, oh, I hate this. I got to like this part where you have to fight like a whole bunch of these like flying enemies that also shoot out poison gas. So it's like while you are trying to hit these flying enemies, you're also dying because you are poisoned, and they're also like hitting you from a point where you can't see.
Fire,
it was awful. I was having the worst time of my life.
I hear from a lot of people that I've heard this from RZ, and I think Joseph Anderson talked about this. A lot of people have talked about that the latter half, I guess, of that game, the later parts, are like actual bullshit. Like, more than is usual in Dark Souls. Like, it's not well. I think that's probably the breaking point that they reached making a game this big, is that the later parts of the game are not balanced at all. It's like literally, it's pretty almost unfair and frustrating at the very end of the game. Well, just I think like the latter half of it all is like, seems to be like what people have arrived at, is it's not super well designed later in the game. You have to kind of break it to get through it.
Maybe the game is a little too big for its own good, but I mean, for whatever it's worth, those 40 hours that I spent when I was like in that frame of mind, that was some of the coolest, I guess, experiences that I've ever had with the game. You were talking about like Tunic, about like how that's all about discovery. I think this is like, it has a lot of the same appeal. Like, again, like one of the things people always talk about is like when they go underground and they see like this huge area that's like covered in stars and like the sky is purple, and like, I mean, just discovering that there's like an entire, like, it's not as big, but like it's still way bigger than it has any right to be. But like this huge area, like underground, it's like, whoa! It's like, again, like you're just always finding new things, and there's always like something pulling you in.
I think that's the thing that FromSoft has always been good at, is world design. So
yes,
that's one of my favorite things about Souls. So
yeah, Elden Ring is very good. I mean, that's really all I have to say about it. But maybe at some point I will, pull up my big boy pants and play through more of it. But at the moment, I'm fine right here. I had 40 hours. I thought it was very good. 40 hours is like a typical length for a JRPG anyways. I liked it. It deserves a lot of the hype. So, what about you, Exo? What is your game of the year?
Okay, so far we've talked about a lot of different games that came out this year, and the common theme for me, if you go back and listen to what I was saying, was like, even the good games had something about them that I really didn't enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, wasn't really a fan of how the combat and difficulty were designed in Tunic. I didn't really think the Demon Slave system was that great in Bayonetta 3, and I thought the level design was kind of boring. Spark 3 was really great in some ways, but the moment you go for the score medals or the explore medals, like the pacing just goes out the window. So I've talked about, and even Stray, that was like a game that I would say was a solid good, but I could see ways that could have been like really amazing if it had just stripped out all the dialogue and made everything sort of like from a cat's point of view. So like most of the games I played this year were really disappointing in one way or another, which is why I am forced, even though I'm not proud to say this, to name Sonic Frontiers as my game of the year.
Fair.
Because I know that, Ryan, you liked the game.
Yeah.
It wasn't your favorite thing in the world, but you enjoyed it.
I very much enjoyed it.
King, you had a lot of criticisms, especially of like the cyberspace parts and the story,
I still maintain that it's okay.
Yeah.
I would slide a little towards mediocre, but I land at okay.
Mm-hmm. And as for me, if you go back, we did like a ridiculous super long podcast on this game already, so if you want to hear it in more detail, go watch that. But I think what I'm going to say is that running around the open zones collecting memory tokens and doing all the little platforming challenges was easily the most fun I had with any game all year, because it felt like there was something kind of pure and uncomplicated about it.
Yeah.
Where it was just pure streamlined fun without any... I wasn't getting frustrated at the difficulty design like I was in Tunic. The plot was kind of on the back burner and I didn't really pay attention to it, unlike Spark 3 or Bayonetta 3. And obviously I love collectathons, so seeing Sonic take its try at that I thought was kind of fun. probably the most fun collectathon I've played since like Ukulele. So, and it's like, even though it was a platformer and it had a lot of content in it, the pacing of it did not bother me the way it bothered me in Kirby. Or it felt like there was always something new to do. I could get where I wanted relatively quickly. I don't know. It's like Sonic Frontiers is a deeply flawed video game that tried to do a lot of different things, and it did not totally succeed at many of them. Like, you know, obviously we talked about the story. We talked about like the cyberspace controls being kind of crappy, the reused level themes and recycled assets. Like, it's a deeply flawed game, and that's kind of why I feel guilty naming it my game of the year. But
I don't think you should feel guilty, because I mean, if it makes you feel any better with this, you know, in 2022 alone, I played through the game twice. I played it once on PS4, and then I ended the year by playing it again on Switch. And then I got a PS5 eventually, and, you know, it has like a free upgrade. So I did that, and then wanted to see how it ran, you know, on the PS5. I never got to see the game in 60 frames per second, and, like, I just wanted to test it for a little bit, see what it's like. And I couldn't put it down, you know? Like, I don't think it is the best Sonic game ever made. I don't think it's peak Sonic or anything like that. But there is something about it that, like, when I play the game, I'm in it, you know? It has my attention. And I'm doing like a third playthrough of this fucking game. A third playthrough of Sonic Frontiers, you know?
It must work on some level, because a lot of people seem to like it, so.
I think it's really, like, honestly, it's really fun. Now, in fairness, it's like when I played through it on PS4 and then I played through it on Switch, my opinion did not change at all. Like, I was just like, yeah, no, this is a pretty damn good game. It's a lot of fun. And it's the same when I'm playing it on PS5 right now. It's like, it has not shifted one way or another. I just think it's like a solid, like, if I were to give it like a letter grade, it's a solid B. It's just, it does what it needs to do. It doesn't really waste my time with anything, because, like, I enjoy, well, except for maybe the cyberspace, but, like, running around in the fields is a lot of fun. A lot of the platforming challenges can be really fun when it's not on Chaos Island. And I think a lot of the boss fights are really fun too, you know? And I'm very, like, interested. I wouldn't exactly say excited, but, like, I'm interested to see, like, where they take Sonic Frontiers with its DLC for 2023.
Oh, yeah.
Like, there's going to be, like, a lot of new stuff that they're going to be adding. They're going to add, like, a new, like, I don't know, like a bonus episode or something like that, where we're going to play as other characters, which is really cool. So, you know, I like this game. I think there's no shame in liking it. There's no shame in disliking it, but don't feel bad for saying this is your game of the year. If you liked it, you liked it. Fuck.
Yeah, I guess part of my apprehension comes from the fact that back around when the Game Awards were, like, nominating, like, the community choice and stuff.
Wow.
It seemed like a lot of Sonic fans were trying to, like, AstroTurf the system or game it in such a way that the game would win, because if the game didn't win Game of the Year, I don't know, it would have been like a personal rejection
Sonic
to them or something.
Died.
Yeah. Like it seemed like it just, maybe I'm mischaracterizing their motivation, but it did seem like there was a lot of desperation.
No, I definitely saw that too.
On Twitter, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, so I'm not really one of those people. I'm not one of those people who's gonna sit here and excuse every flaw in the game. Like, this game, like, I don't even like the bosses, and a lot of people seem to like the Titan bosses.
Yeah.
So, you know, like, for me, it is purely memory token stuff that made me love this game so much. But
no, I guess it's like there are tons of games that I love that are deeply flawed. It's always about, like, are the highs enough? And I guess just the highs of this game weren't enough for me. So.
Yeah.
Honestly, I like talking about the Game Awards stuff. I honestly think it's just cool that this game was nominated for anything at all. The fact that it even made it so far to even be on the show, you know?
I think it deserved to be nominated for music, at least.
Yeah.
So I really like the soundtrack.
Yeah.
Kind of sucks that it wasn't.
I've complained about this before, but I'll keep this brief. But I don't see how God of War Ragnarok got a soundtrack nomination, but not Sonic.
Yeah. That was like...
It's because
I don't remember what I think Xenoblade 3 is in there as well, yeah. It's kind of a crime that God of War could even win over that.
If you have a choice between Yasunori Mitsuda and Bear McCreary, I don't know how you're not choosing Mitsuda.
Yeah.
Like, no offense to Bear McCreary, but his background is in film and television, and he does well within that oeuvre, but it's like, the other guy composed Chrono Trigger. I mean, come on.
You're not wrong.
Anyways, I guess that's all for today. Hope you guys enjoyed.
Next year's gonna be fucking nuts. Or this year. It's packed.
I'm already playing fucking Fire Emblem. It feels like there's gonna be a lot of games that come out. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not ready for it.
Like, what is there coming out?
Oh my God,
I'm at a loss.
Well, I mean, King's already got Fire Emblem. There is, of course, the new Zelda game. There is the new Final Fantasy game. There's a handful of Final Fantasy games actually coming out. Isn't Rebirth coming out this year too?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's 16. There's Rebirth. For whatever it's worth, there's also
a Final Fantasy 16.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, that's coming out.
This is the first I've
Dude,
heard of this.
it looks fucking nuts.
I think the DMC combat director is doing the combat of that game, and it looks like it. Looks like a big step up from 15. I'll say that.
Resident Evil 4 is getting a remake, which looks really good.
Oh yeah.
There's fucking Story of Seasons: A Wonderful Life. Like that's getting a remake, and I'm really excited for that.
Star Wars game.
Yes! Spider-Man!
Yeah, the Spider-Man game, Spider-Man 2, I guess, which is kind of funny. Spider-Man 2 coming out in 2023. Same title as the fucking movie.
Yeah. There's a lot. There is a
there
lot
are
of
quite
stuff.
a few games. There was something else I was thinking of. God, I don't remember. But there's a fuck ton coming out. So.
Yeah, I don't know what it says about me, but like, besides Resi 4, like, I don't know, I guess I still need to play the first Spider-Man game, so maybe, like, after I try that, I'll be like, oh, can't wait for the sequel.
That game is very good.
I don't know.
Spider-Man is very good.
I enjoy it.
I'm not really a big Final Fantasy guy, and I didn't really like Breath of the Wild that much, so everything else just kind of seems like not a EXO-type game, I suppose.
Check out the trailers for Final Fantasy 16. You might get a kick out of it.
All right.
Yeah, it seems like much more of an action game than like well, it is, but like... You know what I mean?
Yeah, it looks nuts. I'm ready for it.
It's like I think it's the first Final Fantasy game that's rated like M. So there's like blood and sex in it, which is funny.
Fuck yeah!
I mean, I doubt there's gonna be. Well, that's probably not what you meant anyway. But yeah.
Like there's a scene in the trailer where two characters don't have any clothes. They don't show like actual sex, but like it's implied.
Yeah. Well, it's like if they go there, then it becomes adult only. Yeah. So, yeah.
I don't know, Cyberpunk
which is the reason why... I don't know, maybe the standards have laxed since Fable 1, where it just cuts to black, and you hear moans. So, I don't know if things have changed since then, but I don't know. Anyways, that was our Game of the Year podcast. I'm not sure when we're going to record again. I guess it just the impression I've gotten from our viewership is that people are not interested in the playthroughs. They want podcasts, so we'll figure it out.
Well, we got to finish Sonic Adventure. We got to finish that.
We'll see.
Because I'm having a blast.
Yeah, thank you all for watching, and we'll see you in the next podcast.
Bye-bye.